Have you ever noticed that no matter how hard you train, there's always a voice in your head, mocking you, doubting you, tearing you down? It's like having a toxic coach living inside your mind, telling you that you're not good enough, that you'll mess up, and that you don't belong. And the worst part, it knows exactly when to show up, right before a big game, after a mistake, or when you're already feeling the pressure. It waits for the perfect moment to make you hesitate, overthink, and ultimately crumble. But here's the thing. Some athletes don't have that problem. They've learned how to shut that voice up and just play with unshakable confidence. And you can learn to do this too. In this video, I'm giving you the complete blueprint on silencing your inner critic for good. The same blueprint I've used with pro athletes as a mental performance coach to help them unlock the highest levels of their game. So let's get started. Quick one, if you want to know and be able to use the top mental tools that I train elite athletes in as a mental performance coach, then download my completely free guide, Game Ready, using the link below. So what actually is your inner critic and why does it scream and shout so much? Well, imagine you're walking through a jungle and every few minutes a voice in your head screams, "Watch out, there might be a tiger behind that tree." And it keeps you on edge, second guessing every single step. That voice isn't trying to ruin your life. It thinks it's protecting you. And that's exactly what your inner critic is doing. It's an outdated survival mechanism designed to keep you safe from failure, from embarrassment or rejection. But here's the problem. You're not running from tigers. You're actually trying to dominate in your sport. And that same voice that once helped humans survive, well, it's now keeping you small, hesitant, and afraid to take risks. So let's actually define it. Your inner critic is the voice in your head that constantly highlights your weaknesses, your fears, and doubts, often in the most brutal way possible. It's that voice that turns one bad pass into, "I always mess up," or one missed shot into, "I'm not clutch." It comes from a mix of perfectionism, fear of failure, and past criticism that you've internalized. And the more you listen to it, the stronger it gets. And as an athlete, if you fully tune into it and turn the volume up on your inner critic, then there are several damaging impacts on your training and your performance. Firstly, it kills your reaction time and decision making. In many sports, reaction time is crucial. You need to respond instantaneously to everything that's happening around you. The movements of your teammates, the plays of your opponent, and just the ever-changing dynamics of the game. There's no time to think things through. Every hesitation gives your opponent a significant advantage. Take fencing, for example. The sport is all about lightning fast decisions, attacking when the moment is right and defending when needed. A fencer who's constantly second guessing themselves because of the inner critic is already at a huge disadvantage. They might as well just put their blade down and concede defeat, because the second that inner critic chimes in with thoughts like, "You're too slow," after a lost point, well, it just plants a seed of doubt. And that doubt then leads to hesitation, and the next thing you know, they've completely collapsed and lost the bout. In many sports, decisions need to be instinctive, but when the inner critic steps in, it throws a huge spanner in the works, causing athletes to overthink and doubt themselves, which is exactly when performance begins to unravel. Then secondly, your inner critic drains your confidence and kills your competitive edge. In sport, you know that confidence isn't just important, it's absolutely everything. You need to step into every competition, every training session, fully believing in yourself and your abilities. If you don't, you're already behind. Take track and field, for example. Sprinters need to be 100% confident when they step into the blocks. If they're not, it's game over before the race has even started, because the margins are so razor thin, hundredths of a second can determine who wins and who loses. So if a sprinter's inner critic starts up with thoughts like, "You're not fast enough," then it chips away at their confidence and that'll deflate them right at the worst time possible, when they're actually starting up in the blocks. That then easily shows itself up once the race actually starts. Instead of attacking the race with all-out intensity, they're thinking, "I'm already behind, it's too late to catch up." And the result of this, well, they might not even realize it, but they're running slower than they actually could. The inner critic has already set the tone, draining their confidence and killing that fierce competitive drive that makes athletes elite. In sports where your mindset directly impacts your performance, the inner critic holds you back from showing up as your very best self. It just robs you of that edge that you need to compete at your highest level. And then lastly, it turns mistakes into full-on collapses. Mistakes are inevitable in sports. Every athlete fails, whether it's a missed shot, a drop pass, or a strikeout. But the key is how you respond. And that's where the inner critic does a lot of its damage. Take baseball, for example. A batter who strikes out once might be frustrated, but they know deep down that's just part of the game. However, if their inner critic kicks in with, "You've lost your swing," then they just start mentally spiraling. Instead of focusing on the next pitch, they're replaying the previous failure over and over in their head. And the next time they step up to the plate, their mind is clouded with so much self-doubt. They're thinking about that past mistake and not the task at hand. Instead of swinging with confidence, they're overthinking every single movement, trying so hard to fix things, and boom, another strikeout. What started as one mistake has now snowballed into a full-on collapse in their performance. The inner critic convinces them that one mistake defines them, making it so much harder to recover and perform at their best. So look, I bet at some point you faced all of these performance killing issues as a result of your inner critic at some point. And you're probably desperate to know, well, what can you actually do to finally shut it up? Well, let's now talk about the best 3 strategies to achieve this. First up, hear, don't listen. I'm not going to bullshit you. The truth is that the inner critic never fully goes away. It's simply part of us. As said before, it's actually hardwired into the brain to help us be aware of our flaws and keep us safe. It is literally a survival mechanism. But here's the key, you don't have to listen to it. You can hear it, acknowledge it, but then choose not to follow its advice. This is something you can condition yourself to do, and the more you practice it, the easier it gets. So look, when your inner critic starts chirping away, simply acknowledge its presence, but don't give it the power to control you. You can say to yourself, okay, I hear you, and then shift your focus back to what's important. This might be something as simple as focus on your breath or reminding yourself of your training. You're essentially telling yourself, I hear your concern, but I'm in control here. By recognizing that it's just a voice, not a fact, you gain power over it. It doesn't have to dictate your performance. Secondly, become friends with yourself. The inner critic isn't your enemy, it's actually part of you. And because of that, you can change how it communicates with you. What if instead of criticizing you, it supported you? Imagine if the voice in your head could be like a supportive friend who still points out flaws, but in a kind, constructive way. The goal here is to retrain your inner critic to speak to you like a coach, not a tormentor. This doesn't mean silencing it completely, it means transforming the tone and message that it sends to you. So to do this, start by mentally reframing the voice of your inner critic. Instead of hearing it say, you're terrible at this, you'll never make it, practice hearing it say something like, you can do better, and here's how you'll improve. This allows you to still acknowledge the mistake, but in a way that's far more constructive. The inner critic is still there, but it's now acting like a coach, giving feedback, not a voice that's just tearing you down. This does take a lot of time and conditioning, so don't think that this will be a quick fix. I really recommend in the early stages of trying this that you facilitate it with regular journaling sessions. To do this, write down specific thoughts that your inner critic has, and then write the reframe response. Visually seeing that shift from overly negative to simply constructive criticism is a great confidence booster and will help make this transition to be more permanent. And then the third strategy is verbally cut it off. Sometimes the inner critic gets so loud in your head that it takes over completely, leaving you paralyzed in doubt or overthinking. That's when you need to cut it off, and you can do this with your own voice. By verbally expressing what's going on in your head, you force your brain to shift gears. Your brain actually needs to focus on the physical act of vocalizing something. In other words, actually producing sounds out of your mouth, which takes attention away from all of that mental chatter. This simple technique creates a shift in focus, helping you regain control. So when that inner critic starts spinning out of control, try saying something out loud. A mantra, a positive phrase, or a simple grounding word that just refocuses you. This can literally be before any big moment, such as an important serve in tennis or a penalty kick in football. If you feel that pressure building, say to yourself, I'm ready, focus. I've practiced this. Verbalizing those thoughts cuts off the mental noise and just helps you reset. It's simple, but it's powerful. Speaking out loud interrupts that overwhelming internal dialogue and just pulls you back into the present moment, ready to perform at your absolute best. So look, you can't always silence the inner critic, but you can control it. Positive self-talk is a powerful weapon to achieve this, but I know it is hard to know exactly how to use self-talk properly. So to help with this, check out this next video here.